Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Product Thinking with Chion. I'm super excited because this is the first episode for the year 2022. I want to start out by saying a very big thank you to everybody that supported me last year. Thanks for liking, thanks for commenting, thanks for sharing my YouTube and Medium content with your network. And I would say the support I got last year is giving me the motivation to push through this year. So check out for my content this year because I'm going to be talking through my journey and my learnings via my YouTube channel and also via my Medium publication. In today's episode of Product Thinking, I'll be talking about communication. Communication is a very, very important skill set that you should have in your toolbox as a product manager. Listening to some product managers that work at Google, they are of the opinion that about 90% of your job as a product manager is centered around communication. Yes, you heard that right. About 90% of your job as a product manager is centered around communication. This is to show you how important communication is to you as a product manager. You are going to find yourself communicating with both internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. You're going to find yourself communicating with the C-suite members, with customers, with marketing team and whatnot. So it's important that you have this skill set. Um, Communication is so central to your job because you have to get buy-in from different stakeholders, and you also have to get buy-in from the different moving parts of your product, and you also have to find a way to communicate your product vision to different people and also align the different stakeholders. This is why communication is very, very important. You're going to find yourself communicating verbally, you're going to find yourself communicating via documentation, and it's important that you know how to navigate your way through the different dynamics you're going to be facing every day. Given the importance of communication as a product manager, I'm going to be talking about this topic in two episodes. So, in today's episode, I'm going to be giving you some tips you should have at the back of your mind when communicating with different people. And in the next episode, I'm going to be talking about the different dynamics you should have at the back of your mind when communicating with specific stakeholders like your designer, your engineers, your C-suite members, your customers, and whatnot. So make sure to look out for my next video and make sure to watch this video till the end. See you soon. The first tool tip I'll be giving you around having an effective communication as a product manager is that you should understand the receiver. Yes, it's important that you understand the receiver and you should understand the folk that it is that you're communicating to. Try to understand their style of communication, try to understand what it is that work for them. You want to know if a verbal communication is fine by them. You want to know if an online communication is what is going to work for them. You want to know if an email communication is what is going to work for that particular person. You want to know if a one-on-one conversation is actually what is going to get to the heart of that particular person, right? So it's important that you know what it is that might actually work for the person you're actually communicating with. And I've worked with different C-suite members as a product manager. For some C-suite member, what they want to do is to see some sort of slide presentation, and when you give them some sort of slide presentation, you really get to their heart, and you're getting their attention right out the gate. I've also rarely worked with a CEO that prefers to see some sort of flow chart, right? He wants to see a detailed flow chart, and once he sees a detailed flow chart, yes, he has your ears and you have his attention just right out the gate. So you want to really know what communication style is actually going to work for the person that it is that you're communicating with. So the next two tips I will give for effective communication is the fact that you have to listen loudly. Listening is as important as speaking when communicating with somebody, right? When you take your time to listen, you get to hear what is not being said. Now, this was a mistake I made when I was transitioning from software engineering to product management. I had these ideas, I had this energy, and I just wanted to go, 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 go. And the drawback to this approach is the fact that you might not be reading in between the lines, you might not be getting the context as to where people are communicating from, right? So you want to take out your time to listen to what is being said, and also to listen to what is not being said. So I like to call it as listening as a detective, right? When somebody is communicating with you as a product manager, you want to make sure that you are not in a haste to speak, right? Don't be in a haste to speak. When someone is speaking to you, try to gather your thoughts together, try to get the context of where they're coming from. In fact, taking your time to listen is going to make you ask the right kind of questions. And I should also say this is one mistake that even product managers make during their interviews, especially when they are doing case study interviews, right? So you are in an interview setup and you are being given a case study. You've not taken out time to listen to what the case study is talking about. You've not taken out time to really gather your thoughts together, and you're in a haste to speak, right? That is a setup for failure. So relax, take a step back, make sure that you are listening carefully and you are getting all the context that you need to get before gathering your thoughts together and speaking. People also want to feel like they are being heard, right? People don't want to feel like you are cutting them out. People want to feel respected. And when you take out time to listen to people, then they will in turn listen to what you have to say. But if someone is speaking and you're not taking out time to listen to them and you are cutting them and you just want to throw your ideas on the table, then it could cause some sort of friction between you and the stakeholder that it is that you're communicating with. Now, the next tip is somewhat similar to the previous tip I talked about. Now, in the previous tip, I talked about the fact that you have to listen loudly. Right now, I'm talking about the fact that you need to ask questions. Asking questions as a product manager is going to give you more context, it's going to give you more detail that you need to work with to effectively deliver on your job. Now, when asking questions, it's important that you ask open-ended questions. Right. So, what is the difference between an open-ended question and a closed-ended question? A closed-ended question is sort of like a question that gives you a one word answer, right? So an example of a closed-ended question is if I ask you, are you coming to the party, right? The answer could either be a yes or a no. But an open-ended question tends to probe to get more details, right? So when I ask a question like so at this party, what are the different activities, right? This particular question then gives the listener room to think and give more details. So as a product manager, you want to be asking open-ended questions because it lets you probe deeper and it lets you get more context and more information that you're going to need to deliver effectively on your job. So I've talked about speaking, I've talked about listening effectively, right? And right now, to talk about silence. Now, silence is very powerful. Silence is also an important part of communication. You should know when to be silent and you should know when not to be silent. And previously, I talked about asking open ended questions. Now, when you ask an open ended question, it's important you stay silent because your open ended question might have to give the recipient room to think, gather their thoughts together, and give you a response. You should not be in a haste to speak, especially when you ask some tough questions or some difficult questions. At that point, you might want to stay silent, right? So that you can get your recipients to speak. Now, this is a very, very constructive use of silence. Another constructive use of silence is when you are having some sort of communication with someone and the communication gets really emotional, where the person is getting to share some really personal details with you, probably giving you details about the death of a loved one, right, or giving you details about something that they lost. At that point, you should not feel obligated to speak just immediately, right? Giving them room to be able to express their emotions in any way they feel comfortable with. They could be expressing their emotions through crying or by just sobbing, right? You shouldn't feel obligated to want to speak just immediately. At that particular point, a more effective form of communication might be a gentle nod on the head, or probably a pat at the back, depending on the kind of relationship you have with that person, obviously, right? And depending on the kind of relationship I'm having with the person, it could just be a hug at that time. So you might not just feel obligated to want to speak just right out the gate, right? Now that is another scenario where silence could really be powerful, but silence could also be destructive. When you're in a meeting and a question is being asked and you have answers to that question, or when you are being asked a question, right, or when you are told to give context to something that you have more information about and you choose to stay silent, then in this particular scenario, silence could really be destructive. So try to read the room and know when to speak, and also know when to just stay mute. Yeah. Okay, this video will not be complete if I don't talk about the need to over communicate, right? As a product manager, it's better to over communicate than to under communicate. When you under communicate, a lot of details will be swept under the rug. You could look stupid in meetings. You could pay dearly for under communicating. This could translate into low revenue for your organization. This could translate into misalignment across various stakeholders that you're going to be managing and talking with as a product manager, right? You do not want that to happen. It's more important that you are at the face of everybody, right? Disturbing them and getting stuff done. I was going to say getting shit done, but this is a YouTube channel, so okay. You want to make sure that you are getting stuff done, right? And the way you can get stuff done is by being all over the face of people and over communicating and getting all the details that you need to getting all the alignments that you need to get across various stakeholders, right? So this is my point. You should make sure that you are not under communicating at any point as a product manager. Make sure that you are not letting any detail get swept under the rug. Make sure that you get every detail you need on paper. Make sure that you get your stakeholders to give their buy-in to every decision that you need to put a check mark on as a product manager. Very, very important. Very, very. Most likely, as a product manager, at some point you're going to find yourself working remotely, or you're going to find yourself working in an hybrid situation. And it's important that you understand the dynamics of how to effectively communicate when you are working remotely, right? And when you are working across a cross cultural setting and environment, right? So when you're working in a cross-cultural setting, you want to make sure that you understand the cultures of different people, and that you are able to adapt, and you are culturally intelligent, when communicating with different people. In our world today, you're going to find yourself communicating with stakeholders from different continents, people having different sexual orientation, people having different religious orientation. So you want to be smart enough and intelligent enough to be able to navigate these different dynamics of communications. Still speaking around remote communication and cross-cultural communications, You want to be careful with your use of humor. What could be humor to someone in Canada might be an insult to someone from Nigeria. Yeah, I mean, that's true. You also want to understand the dynamics of scheduling meetings with people, respecting people's time, organizing meetings into their calendars, and documenting the different conversations you're having. And as your processes changes, you are documenting stuff. You also want to understand when to make visual communication with different people and whatnot, right? If you adopt an agile approach to your product management style and to your organization, this is really going to help you fill a lot of some of these gaps that will really help you when you are working in a remote setting. So, for the last tip I'll be giving you today's episode, I'll be talking about giving feedback and not sounding judgmental as a product manager, right? So, when somebody does something, you want to make sure that you are not communicating in a judgmental tone to people, because being judgmental and not being kind or friendly could really turn people off, and it could really distort your workflow as a product manager. When communicating with people and when trying to give people feedback, don't be judgmental. I actually adopt a particular framework when giving feedback, and I call it the ask approach. ASK. When giving feedback, you want to make sure that your feedback is actionable, you want to make sure that your feedback is specific, and you also want to make sure that your feedback is kind, right? So if I want to give, let's say, someone that is reporting to me some sort of feedback as to how they are supposed to document their user stories, right? I'm going to start out by letting them know what it is that they need to do. The instruction I'm going to be giving them should be actionable, right? I don't want to throw them to the wind where they are confused as to what it is that they have to do. Then I have to be specific, right? I have to drill down to what it is that they've not really done well. Then I have to be specific, let them know what it is that they've not done well, and letting them know what it is that they actually need to do. Then I have to be kind in the way I communicate. I don't want to sound judgmental. I don't want to yell at people at a stakeholder when I'm discussing with them, right? I want to be as kind and as friendly as possible when communicating with people, right? So being kind doesn't mean you are not going to state things out when they are wrong, right? It's just the approach that you take that really matters at the end of the day. All right, thanks for following today's episode of Product Thinking with Chum. I'm really glad that you watched this video up until this point. If you feel that this video was insightful in some way, please feel free to like, comment, and share this video with your network. And I also want you to look out for the next video I'm going to be dropping in the next few weeks. And in that video, I'm going to be talking about the dynamics of communication you're going to be having with different stakeholders, right? So I'm going to be really specific, and I'll be talking about how you should communicate with your product designer, how you should communicate with your software engineers, how you should communicate with your marketers, with your sales folks, and how you should communicate with senior executive members. I think that video is actually going to be really interesting, so watch out for it. Thanks, and do have a great day. Bye.